Casinos. A place where dreams are born and hope goes to shrivel up and die. A magical place designed to be an adult playground. One of the very few establishments on Earth where they want you to be absolutely blind drunk because they want you to be in a condition where you will make very bad decisions. A place where all of the flashing lights distract you from the fact that your bank account is being devoured. And every free cocktail is a consolation prize for your rapidly declining dignity. People say it's about luck, about strategy, knowing when to hold 'em and when to fold 'em. But let's be honest, that little leprechaun-looking slot machine is laughing at you every single time you take it for a spin. It takes your money, it takes your pride, and it gives you absolutely nothing in return. But still, people keep coming back. Because casinos sell you the grand fantasy that you, yes you, just might be the one to finally beat the house. Even though the house always wins. Some people take the loss gracefully, but others don't. And those types don't just lose their money, they lose their mind. This is the story of one such man. A man who lost absolutely everything and he left the casino with a giant grudge, only to return later with £1,000 of dynamite. John Birges, the Harvey's Resort hotel bombing. Please leave a like and a comment on this video because it really helps me in the algorithm. I just found out something wild about stem cells. They're like tiny little repair crews in your body that go around and fix things that need to be fixed. Dr. Eric Berg, one of the most watched health educators on YouTube, has been talking about this for years.
A stem cell is kind of like this reserve cell that can pretty much change into anything that you need. They're using it now to regenerate fibrosis, which then allows the heart muscle function to improve by 30%. They can do the same thing with liver fibrosis and damaged brain cells. They're getting great results stimulating new cartilage in your joint. Some people are using it for autoimmune diseases like MS, and also to help rejuvenate skin cells to actually make the skin young again. There's also stem cells for cancer. It's very important to understand how to keep that stem cell population at the highest level.
But the problem with stem cells is that they are crazy expensive. $50,000 for one placenta stem cell injection. But luckily, my guys over in Black Forest have developed cocoa flavanols. Studies have been done to show that the flavanols in cocoa stimulate stem cells to come out of your bone marrow. Like bees coming out of a beehive in your bloodstream, and they go around and fix whatever needs to be fixed. Harvard scientist Dr. William Lee actually backs this up.
Now, how do we know this actually functions, works in people? Well, clinical studies have been done with high flavanol cocoa to show that in like men who are in their 60s with heart disease, they could actually just have 2 cups of dark chocolate hot cocoa a day for a month. Yeah. And they doubled the amount of stem cells in their bloodstream, and their circulation improved measurably.
This isn't your average cocoa. It's a stem cell power-up. I mix it into my coffee or in my protein shakes. It tastes great, there's no sugar, and it's only 20 calories. So, if you're experiencing significant aging, slow recovery, or you're just feeling a little bit off, blame your lazy stem cells. But cocoa flavanols activate them, like a fountain of youth in a scoop. So go to my link in the description box down below or in the pinned comment down below for the next 48 hours and you can get a whopping 40% off promo for the next 48 hours only. Janos Birges, later changing his name to John Birges Sr., was born in 1922 in Hungary, a country known for its goulash and paprika, but best known for getting its absolute shit kicked in by larger empires. Now, being born in 1920s Hungary was not like drawing the short straw in the 20th century. It was more like getting deep-throated by the fist that was holding the straws. You see, John's childhood unfolded at the same time that his country basically got sucker punched into World War I. Literally sliced in half by the Treaty of Trianon, losing almost half of its territory and population, and then voluntarily being thrown into the dumpster fire that was World War II. All of this is just a fancy way of saying that Birges's early life was pretty bad. So, World War II rolls around and young John claims, mind you, not a fact, claims that he was a pilot for the Luftwaffe. You know, the German one with the swastikas and all that. Not that I would know anything about that subject, but anyway, whether that's true or just made up bullshit, who fucking knows? Because we couldn't confirm this at all, and the only source of this information was John. John also claimed that he was a military intelligence provider for the United States during the war, which is a giant fucking contradiction on itself. He probably would have put pilot, spy, sex god on his resume if anybody bothered to ask. So, moving forward, keep in mind that he may or may not have been completely full of shit about his early years. But, for the sake of a good story, I'll just believe everything he claimed. By 1948, the Soviets rolled into Hungary like they owned the fucking place. Because they were about to. And our boy ended up captured and sentenced to 25 years in the Gulag. Birges didn't serve the full 25 years though. He did 8 years and then he decided to escape. So, how did he do that? Legend has it that he went full Michael Bay. He set off an explosion and he slipped out during a mass repatriation of prisoners, claiming that he used dynamite as his preferred escape method. Again, the facts on this are rather murky, but there might be a touch of truth to it, because, as we will learn later, John was actually very, very skilled in using explosives. Fast forward to 1957, and John finally makes it to the United States, penniless and stateless. And like any immigrant with possibly unresolved war crimes, he decided to settle in Clovis, California. And he started hustling like his life depended on it. He built a landscaping business from scratch. He goes from shoveling the dirt himself to actually owning all of the equipment and hiring people to make the big bucks. People respected him, possibly ignoring the whole Nazi pilot part, though I imagine he probably kept that to himself. And they described him as being charismatic, intense, and handsome, by late 1950s standards at least, with a thick Hungarian accent and a big, massive eagle tattoo across his chest, because, of course. Unfortunately, I couldn't dig up any pictures of him from this period, so just think of Tony Montana, but Eastern European. Which is actually pretty fucking terrifying. With his landscaping business booming, John decided to expand, and he bought a restaurant named the Villa Basque in Fresno. And it was actually pretty successful, until it mysteriously burned down. And Birges, by sheer fucking coincidence and nothing else I'm sure, collected a fat insurance payout. With the landscaping business still going grand and the suspiciously convenient burning and payout for his restaurant, he was basically set for life. He got the money, he got the swagger, he got everything a man needs. Except one little tiny thing called self-control. Which brings us to the Harvey's Resort Hotel, and more importantly, John's love of gambling. Now, Harvey's Resort Hotel wasn't just a casino. It was the casino. Harvey Gross, a meat wholesaler who figured out that the post-war boom was coming and Americans were going to be more willing to blow their disposable income on luck rather than pork chops, took a gamble of his own and he built the Harvey's Wagon Wheel Saloon and Gambling Hall. A modest yet stylish joint that combined a bar, a few gambling tables, and a steakhouse. The name Wagon Wheel wasn't just for marketing fluff. The place was actually built like an old Wild West saloon, back when that theme was still charming rather than just trashy. And while the word casino wasn't on the sign, because at this time there was a lot of stigma and weird laws about calling something a casino, anybody who walked in the place could immediately tell what the main attraction was. As the 50s and 60s flew by, Harvey's just grew and grew like a gambling tumour. More rooms, more tables, more everything. Harvey himself grew to be something of a legend. A host that would shake your hand, pour you a drink, and then watch as you gamble away your mortgage and your children's university fund with a smile on his face. His motto was simple: keep the whales well fed, keep the suckers entertained, and make everyone believe that they will win next time. When asked why he refused to expand beyond Lake Tahoe, he was quoted as saying, "I have a nice little business, how many steaks can I eat?" By the 1970s, it wasn't just a casino hotel. It was the crown jewel of Lake Tahoe's southern shore. 197 rooms, 11 stories high, fine dining, top entertainment, and big money tournaments. It was the place that the Nevada high rollers came to flex their ego, and the small timers came to psych themselves up into believing that they were just one win away from greatness. Everything ran like a very well-oiled, money-sucking machine 24/7, with the air being 90% cigarette smoke and the drinks being free, of course, because nothing loosens a man's grip on his wallet quite like a couple of flashy cocktails on the house. And that was exactly the kind of intoxicating environment that hooked John Birges. When John first walked into Harvey's, he was still riding high. He had the confidence of a man who believed that the rules didn't apply to him. And he had the bank account to back that up. To him, it wasn't just a place to gamble casually, it was a place to win big. At first, it was just a little bit of fun to blow off some steam. Big bets and no hesitation. The dealers got to know him. The waitresses started to recognise him and knew his drink order before he even sat down. He tipped well, laughed hard, and gambled even harder. But casinos have a way of chewing out your cockiness and spitting you back out into reality. John started losing. Hard. Not once, not twice, but constantly. Every just one more dug a deeper and deeper hole into his pocket. And every trip ended up with more money gone than he had initially planned. He would walk out in the early hours of the morning, drunk with bloodshot eyes, muttering to himself that next time would be different. Except, it never was. By the end of his run, John Birges had lost a rough estimate of $750,000 to Harvey's casino. $750,000 fucking gone just like that. That wasn't just an oopsie daisy, that was life ruining. The kind of loss where you don't just start selling all of your assets, you also start looking for someone to blame. And in John's mind, the blame, of course, couldn't fall on his own poor self-control. God forbid you take some responsibility after being bled dry the first 20 times you walked into the casino. No. In John's head, Harvey's didn't just take his money, they robbed him blind and laughed while they were doing it. They also humiliated him by kicking him out of his favourite suite, number 1017, on New Year's Eve, right in front of other patrons. So now, John was left with nothing but a very bruised ego, a giant debt, and an even bigger desire for revenge. And not just any run-of-the-mill type of revenge, I'm talking about biblical, Old Testament type shit. If Harvey's casino had destroyed him, he was going to destroy Harvey's casino. Literally. So John started planning. Around October of 1979, John rented a studio apartment about a mile away from Harvey's, turning it into a Bond villain-style lair to keep an eye on the place that he wanted to destroy. And from there, he started to scout Harvey's for 6 long months like an evil, obsessive ex-girlfriend. He watched the changes in security shifts, he learned at what time the traffic was the most quiet, he even measured the height of the fucking curb outside of the lobby entrance so that he could figure out how to wheel the bomb inside without breaking his back. After planning everything to the smallest detail, John needed assistance for the plan to work. And who better to mix into your problems than family? When John shared his grand plan with his own sons, 19-year-old John Jr. and 18-year-old James, they quite reasonably assumed it was just another wild joke being made by their dad, waiting for the punchline where they needed to go and buy laser sharks for his moat for his bond layer. But no, John was being dead fucking serious. John also asked for assistance from his own girlfriend, Ella Joan Williams, a Fresno probation officer with the morals of a stripper pole, who turns out was kind of a ride-or-die bitch who actually agreed to assist him in becoming somewhat of a logistics assistant. She later was the one to type up the infamous extortion letter. So, after 6 months of marinating in his hatred and fantasizing about turning Harvey's into a parking lot, by spring of 1980, John was ready. The planning turned into action, and the only thing that was missing was firepower. A lot of it. On June the 10th, John convinced his 2 sons to help him steal over 1,000 fucking pounds of Hercules Unigel dynamite from a construction site at Helms Power Plant. The most hilarious part of this entire heist was that they didn't even have to come up with some grand plan on how to steal it. They literally just fucking walked in, loaded up the dynamite, and drove off. Nobody confronted them and nobody asked them any questions. No, seriously, I couldn't believe it myself when I read it. It really was just that easy. The fucking sand in the Sahara Desert was better secured than that fucking dynamite. John hauled his arse back home and he stored the dynamite in a walk-in freezer that he had built in his garage. Now, this is not fully confirmed, but to test the power of the dynamite, John may or may not have actually blown up the Dry Creek Bridge in Clovis later the same month. Witnesses reported a massive explosion at Shepherd and DeWolf Avenues, and the authorities later found more hidden dynamite nearby. The FBI would eventually connect that to John, figuring that he could be the only possible suspect for it due to him being the only person in the state of Nevada at this time to have over 1,000 fucking pounds of dynamite just chilling in the aforementioned walk-in freezer right next to the frozen pizza and chicken nuggies. So, with enough explosives to flatten an entire city block, John began to construct his grand magnum opus. For 2 months, he tinkered like a mad Hungarian MacGyver. The result, drumroll please, weighing in at an impressive 1,000 pounds with 28 toggle switches, a mercury switch, a float switch, and an atmospheric pressure switch disguised as an IBM copy machine, we have what became known as the Machine. And when I said his magnum opus, I meant it. As a matter of fact, the bomb was so complex that the FBI later called it the most sophisticated improvised explosive device that they had ever seen. It was so impressive that they actually built a replica of it and used it for future training exercises after 2009. John's sons took one look at the thing and said, "We are not hauling that absolute death machine and risking getting nuked. Fuck that, we're out." So, John had to find replacements for them. Enter Willis Bill Brown, a former landscaping employee of John's, and Brown's son-in-law, Terry Lee Hall. These two agreed to be the replacement delivery boys for what was basically a portable box of death. Ella Joan Williams then typed out the 3-page extortion letter. The pictures for the letter, unfortunately, aren't readily available, but it basically reads like a passive-aggressive IKEA instruction manual with a lot more threats than usual about mass murder. The plan was very, very simple on paper. Transport the bomb in a white 1975 Dodge Tradesman van, slap on an IBM logo for cover, now keep that in mind because it's going to be very important later on, and then just wheel it right the fuck into Harvey's like a delivery job. John was very, very careful about drilling the men on how fragile the device actually was, warning them to be extremely careful not to tilt it unless they wanted to redecorate the casino and themselves into a fine mist. Also, the 2 delivery guys had no idea that it was a bomb. John just told them it was a very, very sensitive and delicate printer, so they had to be very, very careful with it. On August 26, 1980, at 5:30 in the morning, Brown and Hall, dressed in blue coveralls, carefully rolled the machine through a side entrance of Harvey's, up an elevator, into the 2nd floor office area, and left it in there. And they left the extortion letter sitting on top of the machine, addressed in bold letters to Harvey's management. And this is basically what the letter said. This bomb is tamper-proof. Try moving it even a fraction of an inch and it will explode. Try flooding, gassing, unscrewing, or any other kind of disarming, and it will explode. Pay $3 million in used $100 bills, deliver it by helicopter to Lake Tahoe Airport, and wait for a strobe light signal for drop-off. Happy landing. Shortly after the bomb delivery, Harvey's staff stumbled upon the strange new office printer and also the letter. And the Douglas County Sheriff's Office was very quickly on the scene. Sheriff Jerry Maples read the note, saw this fucking thing, and made the obvious call. Everybody get the fuck out the building. Dealers were dropping chips mid-game, pit managers yelled at staff to clear the floors, tourists chugged their last complimentary cocktail, and the slot machines went silent for the first time in years. By mid-morning, a few hours later, the FBI was on the scene, alongside bomb experts from the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco and Firearms. Chris Roney, head of the FBI's explosives unit with years of experience in defusing everything from pipe bombs to mortars, was put in charge of the operation. But what he found was unlike anything he had ever seen before. The letter wasn't bluffing. The bomb was virtually tamper-proof. Roney later said, "You could spend the rest of your life studying it and still be nervous to touch it." So, the only real play was to stall for time, figure out who planted the bomb, and get the information from them on how to disarm it. Meanwhile, back to John. He was supposed to set up everything for the drop. Except everything that could have gone wrong went fucking wrong. It started with a small and stupid hiccup. John had forgotten the 12-volt battery that he needed for the strobe light signal. And instead of just improvising, he just went out to buy one. And because he never did anything simple, like just buying the damn thing and getting the fuck out of there back to where he needed to be, the idiot decided to, and I shit you not, argue with the salesman over the price of the battery for a solid chunk of time. By the time he finally left the store, hours had already been lost. And if that scenario wasn't dumb enough, don't worry, there's more. Ella Williams, while typing out the famous extortion letter, actually put in the wrong fucking coordinates for the helicopter pilot who was supposed to be doing the cash drop. Instead of guiding him to the correct drop site, she instead sent him on a scenic detour of Nevada. Also, John Birges Jr., John's son, who refused to do the bomb drop-off but still accepted to help run errands and supply trips during the operation, actually hit a deer while he was driving between sites, completely wrecking his car's front end. So he started speeding to try and still keep to the schedule. And he got pulled over for speeding and he got a ticket, which would later be a nice little literal paper trail for the FBI to follow. And if all of that still wasn't enough, Ella Williams actually crashed her own fucking car around about the same time, ending up in hospital. Meaning she was now checked out of the entire operation. So, as that entire literal fucking Three Stooges scenario was all unfolding, Harvey Gross himself was busy making his own decision. And the decision was, fuck that guy's demands. He told the FBI that he cared more about keeping his 1,200 employees paid, rather than handing over $3 million to some random arse lunatic. And the FBI actually agreed with him. Instead, the feds came up with something a bit more elaborate. They would load the helicopter with bundles of fake money but have real $100 bills on either side of the stacks to give the illusion that all of the money was real. And if they could convince John that he was about to get paid, maybe they would be able to literally buy the time that they needed to actually catch him. And so the helicopter, loaded with the fake money, lifted off and headed towards Lake Tahoe Airport. The plan was to get there, see the strobe light, drop the money, and fly off. Except, no strobe light appeared. John's apparently overpriced battery and Williams's incorrect coordinates just made the helicopter circle around waiting for a signal that never came. So the helicopter eventually ran low on fuel and had to return to base. Back again at Harvey's, Ronnie and his team were examining the machine for over a day by now. And the more they looked at it, the more it terrified them. Every single possible solution, moving it, cutting it, x-raying it, freezing it, everything risked a detonation. They even consulted US Air Force and Navy explosives experts, and the verdict was, this device is far too complex to disarm it without it exploding. Sorry, buddy. And by the afternoon of the very next day, they were out of time. They decided on a last-ditch effort of using a shaped C4 charge to try and actually blast the detonators away from the explosives inside the machine using a controlled mini-explosion. Then it happened. At 3:43 PM, the charge was fired and the plan backfired instantly. Instead of severing the detonators, it just set the entire bomb off. Is there any truth to this? Is this a method that actually does work, like setting off an explosion on a bomb to disable it? I've got absolutely no idea because I'm no expert, but a layman like me would think that setting off a bomb on a bomb is a very fucking bad idea. But anyway, the explosion absolutely ripped through Harvey's with the force of an earthquake, blowing out 5 stories of the 11-story tower. The hotel rooms split open, slot machines, tables, beds, TVs and toilets went absolutely flying in every single fucking direction. The damage was at an estimated $18 million. But thanks to the immediate evacuation, no one was killed or even hurt. But the scene was absolutely surreal. Hundreds of onlookers crowded the streets to look at the explosion and the aftermath. Some stood silent with their jaws on the concrete, and some were actually fucking cheering. John probably wasn't the only person who had lost their entire life savings in that building. Even some entrepreneurial arseholes prepared for the best case scenario by starting to sell t-shirts that read, "I got bombed at Harvey's." Harvey Gross went to meet with the FBI bigwigs and the Nevada fire chiefs. When he was told about the shape charge disarm plan and its absolute failure, he was not fucking happy, as you can probably imagine. Because he, like me, was probably also wondering, Why the fuck would you blow up a bomb? Harvey was worrying about a lot of his employees losing their livelihoods. But still, just 48 hours later, Harvey's was back to being open again. At least the lower parts of the casino that didn't get blown to fucking pieces. The actual full restoration took a lot longer. By May of 1981, with a $20 million rebuild budget, Harvey's was back like nothing even happened. Except, the 5-story big chunk of history. But hey, at least it makes for a really good story for guests. The FBI agents turned Harvey's into a crime scene yard sale, combing through the smashed machines, tables, rooms, and everything in between. Bagging every screw, every wire, every chip, and every card like it was Fallout New Vegas. Everything was tagged, bagged, and catalogued. But the first real breakthrough in the investigation came from an unlikely source. A woman by the name of Nancy Domenico, a desk clerk working at the nearby Balaho Motel. You see, working in a casino town meant that a lot of shady shit happened constantly, and she learned to know anything out of place for her own safety. So, when she saw the aforementioned white 1975 Dodge Tradesman with the IBM logo, she immediately noticed that something was off. IBM vans were clean and well marked, but this one looked like it came from a junkyard, and more importantly, the guys driving it didn't match the IBM image. They weren't wearing uniforms. They looked more like construction workers, and they seemed very, very nervous while unloading the gear. Since she was already in the habit of writing down suspicious license plates, she wrote this one down as well. This woman basically fucked over John without ever even leaving her desk and put the feds onto his scent. Meanwhile, do you remember the speeding ticket that John Jr. got? Well, that dumbass paper trail put him right in the neighbourhood of the blast during the delivery. The FBI didn't have to Sherlock very much to start connecting the dots. As the FBI was on his tail, John was already planning round 2. High on his own ego and rage, his resentment wasn't just towards Harvey's, it was towards the banks, big businesses and corporations, and the authorities in general. And his next planned target was San Francisco's Transamerica building. Again, he started preparations, stealing even more dynamite by yet again just simply walking in and taking it. I really cannot fucking believe that worked twice. He then stored it again in the walk-in freezer. John then allegedly went gambling at Harvey's again, oblivious to the fact that the FBI was hot on his tail. As for why he went to gamble there again, I have no fucking clue. It might have been that whole returning to the scene of the crime thing, maybe he just wanted to admire his handiwork, maybe it was some ego thing where he was like, none of them know it was me, but some say it was a final middle finger to the casino that left him with a $750,000 sized hole in his pocket. So he wanted to go and admire the 5-story sized hole that he left in theirs. The FBI confirmed that the plate number Domenico wrote down pointed to the Villa Basque restaurant in Fresno. John's restaurant. With enough evidence from the license plate and the speeding ticket, they raided John Jr.'s bachelor pad, tightening the noose again around John Birges' neck. The last piece of the puzzle didn't come from forensics or brilliant detective work, it actually came from the most reliable tool that any investigator in history has had at their disposal. A pissed off ex-girlfriend. After a breakup that could have been its own crime scene, John Jr.'s ex decided that if she wasn't going to be happy, at least she was going to be richer. Because the FBI was paying $200,000 for information about the Harvey's bombing. She spilled everything that he'd ever let slip to her about the Harvey's bombing to her new boyfriend, because nothing solidifies a new relationship like weaponizing the last one. Her boyfriend, smelling the high ground and, more importantly, the money, immediately took the information straight to the FBI for the reward. Soon enough, agents were on John Jr.'s arse and they told him straight. If he lied under oath, he could be charged with perjury and even conspiracy. He folded rather quickly, and he pointed the finger solely at his dear old dad. And just like that, the FBI had the confession that they needed. On August 15th, 1981, the FBI finally grabbed John Birges in Fresno, after months of trying to track him down. 2 weeks later, they hauled his arse into Reno's US District Court. The day after that, Willis Brown and Terry Lee Hall also got arrested as well. They both get paid a laughable sum for doing this job. Some reports say as little as $100 because John very conveniently forgot to mention that they were hauling a literal fucking bomb. Others claimed that the deal was up to $2,000, but the extra cash was promised after the ransom drop came, which obviously never happened. Either way, their payday was absolutely pathetic for the 7 years in prison that they both got. Ella Joan Williams' trial was a little bit more complicated, but the basic gist is she got convicted in 1983, but had it overturned in 1984, but then pled accessory in 1985, and then got paroled. John Jr. and James took a plea deal. They pled guilty to conspiracy and aiding in theft, and as a reward, they both got suspended sentences. Basically, dodging prison time in exchange for agreeing to be witnesses against their own father. Speaking of which, John Birges was found guilty of federal extortion, bombing, interstate travel in aid of racketeering, conspiracy, and transportation of explosives. And he got life in prison without parole. In 1996, 16 years after the bomb detonated, he died of liver cancer at the Southern Nevada Correctional Center at the age of 74. As for Harvey Gross, he died in 1983, 3 years after the bombing at the age of 78. But the casino lived on, eventually becoming part of what is today Caesars Republic Lake Tahoe Hotel and Casino. Harvey may be gone, but the house still keeps winning. Also, whoever photoshopped this fucking promo pic for the hotel, yes, this is the official picture for the hotel, whoever did this needs to get fired immediately. Birges might have croaked in a prison cell from cancer, but his legacy didn't. In 2023, bringing down the house, the bombing of Harvey's casino hit the screens, a true crime documentary based on the events of the bombing. But it actually plays like a crime comedy because I just couldn't keep a straight face when the narrator says the plan began to unravel while showing a reenactment of a deer smashing into a car. And describing Birges as an evil genius mastermind right before mentioning how he forgot the fucking battery for the strobe light. And to this day, the FBI still shows trainees the model of John's bomb, and they actually use it for their training, showing them how meticulously and perfectly crafted it was to the point of stumping every single bomb disposal guy who looked at it. And John's bomb remains one of the most complex improvised explosive devices ever studied. In the end, John Birges wanted one last gamble, betting absolutely everything on a giant fuck you to the casino. And by God, that was a hell of a fuck you. He might not have won the money, but he sure as hell won bragging rights, at least. If there is a lesson to be learned in this whole story, it's this. If you're really that stupid to blow away your entire life savings in a casino, at least do it at the blackjack table, and not with thousands of fucking pounds of actual dynamite. Or just don't fucking gamble. Especially at a casino where all of the odds are purposefully stacked in the house's favour. These places are built and designed to suck as much money out of you as possible. They're not built for you to win. That's like a 1 in a million chance. Those stories of this guy went to the casino and the slot machine, that's 1 in a million, mate. You literally have a better chance if you just go and put on a lottery ticket. Or you could put that money in my Patreon instead.
It's Count Dankula on YouTube. Everybody just subscribe.